Craig and then Sally.
You can say hi, Donna.
Jamie.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to mute everyone and then I'll turn you on as you speak. So everyone is muted and then I'll unmute Sally.
Okay.
Where is Sally? Okay, Sally.
There you go.
Welcome to all of you, a big group, to the regular meeting of May 27th, 2020. Jamie's not sitting in her normal place, so I think we have to skip the flag salute. Or
I brought a
can we do it
flag.
without the flag?
Oh,
Okay. Well, if you just put your right hand over your heart and ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Jamie.
Of course.
And we'll move to our regular session, and I'll ask for a motion for the approval of the minutes of our last meeting.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Thank you. And we'll move on to our consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
Second.
Any questions? This is a roll call, Jamie.
Okay, Andy,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
Rogelio,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
and I'm I.
Thank you. And we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Thanks,
Diana?
Sally. Thank you. So I'd like to begin with appreciation, and I'd like to recognize all the district employees who have continued on-site services to support the CUSD infrastructure during the school closures. District administration and office staff, school site administration and office staff, transportation and warehouse, technology, food services, maintenance, grounds, and custodians. In addition, I'd also like to recognize and thank Thea Runsback, the carp growers, and the city for that stunning display of the graduates on the flags that line both Linden Ave and Carpinteria Ave.
So cool.
Beautiful. They're really cool. The next item is the governor's budget, and that's the May revise. On Tuesday, School Services of California provided an overview of the governor's May revision. In short, the fiscal outlook of schools is bleak. The calculated state statutory COLA is projected to be at 2.31% for LCFF districts. However, the governor has proposed a zero COLA with an additional deficit of 7.92% and an overall reduction of 10.23% to all the school districts. As a basic district, it was unclear the level of reductions included in the governor's May revise. It was originally thought to be a fair share of approximately $1,050 per student. That would total $2.25 million for our district. According to School Services Update, however, the fair share reduction is projected to be 10% of the state aid minimum guarantee, or $120,501. Also unknown is the impact to property tax collection. Due to the pandemic, the governor has allowed both personal income tax payments to be deferred to July, as well as no penalty for late property tax payments through July. So that makes both our state revenue and our local tax projections really challenging. What we do know is that CUSD and property tax projections, this crisis is not due to a housing market crash. So assumptions are that the taxes will be down, but just how much we're uncertain at this time. Also known as the impact of the crisis on the economy lags in school funding about 2 to 3 years. Additionally, categorical funding for the after-school programs, the CTE programs, the K-12 workforce program, and the agricultural grants, they've all been reduced 50%. Speaking about the food services program, we've seen a decline in participation consistently over the last several years. As participation declines, revenues also decline. The 2019-20 second interim report reflected an estimated $71,544 contribution from the general fund, counting on one-time savings and vacancy gaps while various positions were being filled. Historically, contributions have been, in the 18-19 school year, was $109,575. The year prior, we did not have a contribution because we used one-time dollars to fill the gap. In 16-17, our general fund contributed $188,933 and up to over $200,000 in prior years. Recently, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and school closures, the contribution is anticipated to be over $279,000 in this current year. While we continue to serve the grab-and-go sack breakfast and lunch for pickup only, participation is less than 40 to 50% of participation during the traditional school year. We're providing approximately 500 to 550 breakfast lunches a day. Funding is based on both meal counts and food sales for a la carte items. Loss of the food sale revenue and the greatly reduced federal and state revenue fall short to cover staffing costs alone, not to mention the food costs and the food price escalation over the past few months. One of the areas the district has been exploring and discussing for a few years is the economy of operating a central kitchen. And that's to mitigate the high cost of operating 4 full kitchen cooking staff. Under the direction of the new coordinator of child nutrition and wellness, and with the current changes due to the pandemic, the plan is moving forward to operate out of 1 kitchen. The intent is to operate a sustainable and fully funded food service program moving forward. However, until CUSD is back to school in a traditional setting, revenues will fall short of program costs as participations have been lower in the grab and go and there are not food sales. At this time, all COVID-19 relief funding from both state and federal sources are covering the costs of distant learning, and no new dollars have been identified to cover the loss in the food program. Districts across the state and country are facing deep deficits as participation during the pandemic has averaged about 30% of normal, while program costs, including staffing and food, have not declined. CUSD continues to monitor daily meal participation and find ways to minimize the general fund contribution and strategize for the future and to build a strong, healthy, sustainable food service program. The next item is regarding the after-school program. The After-School Education and Safety Program, ASES, currently serves Canalino, Aliso, and the middle school students with after-school enrichment and tutoring. Over time, program funding has not kept up with the rising costs of pensions, healthcare, and employee compensation increases. Currently, in this school year, the program is using $89,994 from other categorical programs to balance the current expenditures. In the governor's May revise, the ACES program is projected to be cut 50%, creating a further deficit in the program. Over the next several months, as the state budget is finalized, the after-school program will be reviewed and discussed as 2020-21 plans change daily. Now, the next item is exciting, and that's CHS graduation, June 11th, 6 p.m., graduation 2020. So Principal Corneo has done a fabulous job in producing a great drive-in ceremony. He's worked hard with his leadership team to creatively plan so we will have an in-person graduation. This modified in-person ceremony will resemble a drive-in theater with each graduate and family assigned a parking spot. Student speakers, Gerardo and I, will be standing on the roof of the walkway to address the graduates and their families. And the graduation ceremony will be live cast on YouTube and Instagram. Now, with the current health orders, our graduates are permitted to get out of their cars, to walk across the stage, and to receive their diploma. And so we're really pleased that each and every student will have the moment to be celebrated. And at the conclusion of the ceremony, the cars will process out of the parking lot and will be followed by the deputy down Linden Avenue to the Carpinteria Ave, Linden Ave intersection, in which they'll be dispersed. So thank you, Gerardo, for doing a fabulous job in designing that graduation ceremony. It will be talked about for years. The other thing that's being talked about is school reopening. On May 19th, 2020, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, released the updated guidelines for reopening and resuming schools and childcare facilities during this pandemic. The CDC recognizes that schools will determine, in collaboration with state, county, and local health officials to the extent possible, whether and how to implement these considerations while meeting their local needs. The guidelines also provide a 3-step approach to scale up operations, promote health hygiene practices and intense cleaning, training on social distancing protocols, and establishing a plan in the event someone becomes sick or schools require closing. Additional recommendations for schools include placing desks at least 6 feet apart and facing the same direction, providing lunch in classrooms, staggering arrival times, distributing cloth masks for staff, practicing daily health checks, including temperature screenings for all, leaving every other row in a bus empty to provide enough distance, limiting sharing of art supplies, opening windows and doors to help air circulate, limiting gatherings and extracurricular activities, and closing communal spaces such as the cafeteria and playgrounds. We continue to meet 2 times a week with county superintendents and the leadership team to finalize our plan for CUSD, in which we will open August 19th for teachers and August 24th at the students, for the students. Currently, we do not have California guidelines nor Santa Barbara County public health guidelines. As soon as we receive those guidelines, then we will make sure that everybody is aware of them, and we'll begin, and then we will begin to finalize our plan for opening. And the last item is Measure U. At Canalino, construction for phase 3 is almost completed. Work is about 90% complete and on schedule for completion in early June. New furnishings for the classrooms will be installed during the week of June 15th. Summer 2020 projects will get an early start due to the closure of campuses. The following projects have already begun: Aliso Classroom Modernization Phase 2, CHS Classroom Modernization Phase 2, and modernization of the old CHS Administration Building, which will house the new CHS Student Success Center. Interim housing is being provided for the CHS administration staff in the temporary portables in front of the school, and interim locker rooms are being created on campus in the old wood shop, and also a portable classroom behind the gym. The Measure U team is working on the submission of the revised Summerlin project to the County of Santa Barbara for approval of the coastal development permit. And in addition, the architects are designing the detailed plans in preparation for county approval and submission to the DSA. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana, and thank all of your leadership team and all your staff that has continued to work doing all this. It takes a village to make it all work, and I think you've done a great job. And we will move on to D2 with the board honoring the following personnel: Jamie Bickford, Mr. Bisson, Kim Castagna, Judy Haller, and Julie Hathaway. Diana, are you doing this, or Marie?
Oh, I'd like to begin by honoring all of our retirees and their significant contributions to all of our students and their families in Carpinteria. You listed the names, and I just want to share that Jamie has been with the district for 32 years. Thank you, Jamie. Jean Besson has been with us for 17 years. Kim Castagna, 28 years. Judy, 8 years. And Julie, 21 years. Thank you all so much. We are going to have a moment in which, yes, let's clap for everybody. And we're going to have it in a moment. I'm going to ask each principal to say a few words about the retirees. But I would like to read the certificate that everyone will receive. It's a certificate of appreciation. In recognition of your dedicated service to the students, staff, and families of the Carpinteria Unified School District, for your commitment and devotion to the power of our public schools, for your leadership, compassion, and dedication to the lives of students and their families, for your belief in the success of every student, the Board of Trustees and the entire school community offer their heartfelt thanks and appreciation. And thank you for your years of faithful and dedicated service to enriching the lives of our students in our communities through your commitment to our public schools. In addition, our members will receive a clock or a beautiful rosewood plaque
All right.
or a beautiful rose bush. Everyone will receive a rose bush. So at this time, I would like to invite Michelle to say a few words about her staff that's retiring. Michelle?
Any certain order that you want, Diane?
Oh.
Okay. Because she's first on my list here, I'm going to start with Judy. So I have 3 J's tonight: Judy, Jamie, and Julie. So all of them. So treasure, something of great worth or value. Also a person esteemed as rare or precious. Merriam-Webster. Tonight, as we honor Judy Haller, office coordinator at Summerlin, the word treasure comes to mind. As many of you know, Summerlin School is unique in so many ways, one of which is its size. Being a small school, everyone who works there wears many hats. It sometimes can be challenging to find the person, a gem, who can fulfill a position that requires the knowledge and flexibility to work in this type of setting. With Judy Haller, we did just that. She is the treasure of Summerlin School. It takes someone like Judy with a variety of experiences to be able to fill a multifaceted job like the office coordinator position at Summerlin School. So a little about her background. Judy was born, raised, and worked in Everett, Massachusetts until she moved to California in 1989. When asked what brought her to the West Coast, she said that her sister was living in Santa Barbara and that she would frequently fly out to visit her. So when the opportunity came up to move, she thought, who wouldn't move there? She said, the weather, sunshine, beaches made it an easy decision. At the time she left Massachusetts, she was working for the Speaker of the House for Massachusetts House of Representatives. Throughout our time working together, Judy would talk about her life before Summerlin. She always mentioned her job in the House with very fond memories, even keeping a picture of her time there in the Summerlin office area. When she arrived in California, she worked as an assistant underwriter for California Insurance, then moved and went to work for Brooks Institute. She said that she loved working at Brooks and getting to know the many different people. In April 2012, CUSD was looking for a temporary office coordinator for Summerlin School. Of course, it would need to be someone who could not only answer phones, greet parents and visitors, and handle the daily paperwork, but also support teachers, staff, and parents, pretty much on their own. Judy jumped in with both feet, and in August, the temporary position became a permanent one. Not only was she doing all the routine office school duties, she was also a nurse to the students who came in with the cuts and bumps, therapist to the staff members whose days were long and crazy, custodian for when the toilet became a little backed up, yard duty supervisor when a little additional coverage was needed, basically the go-to person at Summerlin. In fact, the most common phrase around campus is, go see Miss Judy. Through all this, Judy was able to multitask and to support everyone who needed it. When I asked Judy what she loved about working at Summerlin, she said it was like having the kids she never had. Judy is always happy to see students and interested in what they were doing. And the students were happy to have her too. They loved taking the attendance to the office. They said that she was always so nice and had a smile on her face. They loved how she was willing to participate, dressing up at Halloween, helping to find the lost gingerbread man, and so much more. Yes, Judy is a gem, rare and precious to the Summerlin School family. We will miss her immensely, but we know that she will be close by. When she isn't traveling, she is looking forward to a trip to Germany. We hope to find her where else in her little store, the Treasure Closet in Summerlin. Thank you, Judy, for all your work and dedication to Summerlin School.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I got a little teary-eyed on that one. Okay.
Judy, would you like to say a few words?
All of you tonight for joining me and me being invited to say hello and to accept this great congratulations. And it's been great working with all of you, and I will miss you, but I will be around. I'll visit. And thank you really for being here.
Thank you, Judy.
Thanks.
Okay, another great person, Julie Hathaway. Everyone knows that the real party always happens in the kitchen. It's the heart of the home. When you think about Julie Hathaway, it is easy to see why the Aliso kitchen was so alive and fun when she was there. She brought her heart into it and made it a warm, welcoming heart of the school. Julie began her work in CUSD in 1999, but she has deep roots in Carpinteria and was part of the CUSD. She was part of CUSD long before then. As a lifelong Carpinterian, Julie was born in Santa Barbara and raised in Carpinteria on Contaloma Drive. She attended Canalino, where her mom worked as an instructional assistant, Carp Middle School, and graduated from Carp High. After high school, she worked at Lucky Supermarket in Carpinteria, and during the next few years, she met and married Dean, a local firefighter. Looking for a part-time job that would allow her to be close to her young sons, Lucas and Dylan, she began working in the Catalina school kitchen. She said that when she worked in the kitchen, you are like the moms of the school. She was the mom at many schools, serving lunches to every school in the district. Julie said she loved being a part of the students' day, seeing the happy little faces and hearing them ask, "What's for lunch today?" Aside from the classroom teacher, the cafeteria ladies are the adults the students see and interact with on a daily basis. During the daily visits, Julie developed a closeness with students, and the students enjoyed greeting her each day. Some students would tell jokes, sing her a song, or let them know some interesting facts that they had learned in class. However they greeted her, it was always returned with a warm smile and kind word. During her 21-year tenure, Julie saw many changes. One thing she enjoyed very much was when the district worked with the Orfalea Foundation. During that time, food service staff worked with the foundation on new and inventive ways to provide delicious and nutritious meals. Julie shared that she loved the collaboration between the school gardens, students, and food service, and that it helped to create a collaborative culture at the school. Through her years, Julie rose to the level of team leader. She enjoyed the position and working with her staff. As a leader, she stated that she felt it important to recognize each team member's achievements and address any challenges as promptly as possible. Her teams have always worked efficiently, and she believes that is due to providing everyone a voice. So Julie has actually been retired since April, and she can attest that retirement is not the end of living, but the beginning of endless possibilities. Of course, the ongoing safety issues have put a damper on her retirement plans, but that hasn't dampened her joviality and sense of fun. She's enjoying spending time at home by the pool, hanging out with Dean, her fur baby Nash, and babysitting her fur grandbaby Jameson. She is looking forward to traveling, first around the United States in her motorhome and visiting the many places she has yet to see, enjoying time with friends and family, and of course, enjoying all things beach. We were very fortunate that Julie spent her last part of her career at Aliso. We appreciate all the relationships she built, her sense of fun, and her warm, outgoing personality. We will miss her, and we wish her well in her new life adventures. All the best to you. Once a lion, always a lion.
Go Lions!
Go Lions!
Thank you all. It just makes me a little teary right now, but just all the relationships that I've built, you know, I appreciate those, good and bad, really. Learned a lot through the 21 years. And been a good ride, actually like a roller coaster, but it's been a good ride. And just want to thank you all for your support. And I'm looking forward to the next quite a few years to have some fun. Thank you, Dr. Fox.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for everything. Okay, Jamie, you ready? Today, we take the time to honor Jamie Bickford as she retires from CUSD. When I think of the definition of the word retire, which means to withdraw or go away to a place of privacy, shelter, or seclusion, that is not how I picture Jamie entering this new part of her life. She is all about relationships and people. Seclusion is not a part of her vocabulary. There is always one home in the neighborhood where everyone likes to hang out. That feeling goes for schools too. At Aliso, Jamie's classroom has always been that classroom. Whether a student or a staff member, Jamie's warmth and caring nature always made you feel welcomed in her room. As Aliso staff, you knew that the bottom drawer held peanut butter pretzels, chocolate, and TJ Swimmers if you needed a quick snack. It was a room where teachers could go to put their feet up, laugh, seek advice on how to reach their struggling students. And as with the snacks, Jamie had a supply, a sense of humor, knowledge, and materials to support everyone. Jamie grew up in Buffalo, New York with her mother, father, and brother. Being very close to her brother who faced different challenges, Jamie stated that she knew she wanted to work in a job that would help people and make them feel valuable and important. That goal took her to the University of Miami for her BA in Liberal Studies, then back to Buffalo where she completed her BS in elementary education. A roommate at the time was working with special education and was coming home with great and interesting stories. Jamie heard her calling and decided that teaching special education would be something she wanted to pursue. She then went on to complete her MS in special education. Upon graduating, Jamie worked at juvenile centers with adolescents with social, emotional, and behavioral problems, learning a lot during that time about building relationships with students and helping them to develop a positive self-image to help meet their unique differences. Looking for new adventures, she moved to Santa Barbara and continued her work with adolescents. Soon after arriving, she met Larry, who would soon become her husband, and she settled into life in Santa Barbara. In 1988, Jamie applied for the open position in special education at Carp Middle School, and her tenure in CUSD began. For 32 years, Jamie has been supporting students throughout the district, working at every school except Carp Family School. She has been instrumental in site and district leadership committees, climate committee, leadership team, PAR assistants, and the union leadership team. Her biggest contribution to CUSD has been to the countless students she has taught, established relationships with, and supported throughout the years. When you walk into her classroom, it is easy to see it is about the whole child. Although they do not have access to the treat drawer, students have access to a variety of learning materials to meet their unique learning challenges. The room is colorful and comfy with different learning areas. Positivity radiates throughout the room. Stickers, positive messages, drawings, and student works are posted throughout. Being in quarantine these last few months have definitely changed the way Jamie is leaving CUSD, but has not diminished her excitement about the future. During the quarantine, she, like so many parents of college-age children, has been able to renew her close bond she has with her and Larry's daughter, Julia. She's excited about Julia's future in science and marine biology and the graduate work she will be doing at UCSB in the fall. A priority on Jamie's list is to travel and fulfill a dream with her mom of taking a riverboat cruise, most likely down the Mississippi River, something they have been discussing for a while. She has many other plans for the future, redecorating her home and helping Larry in the garden, no doubt to make her home an even more warm and inviting place for friends and family. As I said, the classic definition of retirement does not suit Jamie. Being separated from others is not in her makeup. I predict that she will continue to build relationships, share her wisdom and sense of fun with old and new friends. At Aliso, we will miss all her fun and craziness and wish her well on her future adventures. All our best to you, Jamie, from the bottom of our hearts. Go Lions.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie.
You're muted, Jamie.
Okay, how's that?
That's good.
Thank you, Michelle. Really appreciate that. I have worked at every school except for the family school, so I know a lot of you, and some of you aren't there, people that I've worked with for a long time. And it's only really 30 years, but 32, I'll take that.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you so much for your support, Michelle and everybody. I really loved all these years teaching, and I'm going to miss it a lot. You know, Carla wants me to substitute immediately, but I can't do that right now. But anyway, thank you so much. I'll be around Santa Barbara and visit.
Thank you, Jamie. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. You guys are awesome.
Thank you, Michelle. Lisa.
Hello, good evening, everyone. So a few words about Kim Castagna. Pushing 30 years at the district, and most of those at the middle school. Kim is a very sturdy and colorful weave throughout the fabric of Carpinteria Middle School. So Kim is kind and shows integrity in her interactions with family and staff members. She's the first to share a fabulous lesson she's created with a colleague, and has often clipped newspaper articles from the Coastal View, framed them, and left them anonymously for staff members and former students. She goes the extra mile to support scholars in keeping close contact with parents. During remote learning, she took the lead in assigning college tutors for struggling students. So just a side note there, Stephanie Stahl and I had a Zoom conference yesterday with CalSO, and Carpinteria is just leading the way with supporting our students through tutors. So at the moment, we have about 30 students that are being supported, and a lot of that is through Kim's planning. She served on school site council, leadership, many countywide science planning committees. She always looks on the bright side and always maintains a positive attitude. Her dedication and reliability are unmatched. She is and always will be an amazing coworker and friend. She will be very missed by our staff, I can tell you that. She's assured us that she will visit often between her ski trips, and we at Carpinteria Middle School wish Kim the best as she moves into this exciting chapter of her life, and we send red off glove to this educator that we'll miss. So, and I didn't get a whole history of her, but I do know that her husband was a coach at Baylor when I was a student at Baylor. So, so we have that Baylor connection. So congratulations, Kim. We're very excited for you, and we're gonna miss you.
Yay, Kim.
Congratulations.
Hey.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, it was back in 1991. Like, oh my gosh, that's so long ago, that I came to Carpinteria as a newlywed. My husband was coaching basketball at UCSB, and I started out at Summerland. And the following years, when they created the middle school, they changed it from Carpinteria Junior High to Carpinteria Middle School. And so I moved there, and that's when I got started with science. So it's like I'd kind of forgotten I had a science degree and a science background, because I'd been teaching self-contained classrooms for so long. And, you know, over the years, I can't quite beat Jamie, but I have been at the middle school. I've been at Summerland, I've been at Aliso, and I've been at Canalino. Okay, you beat me, Jamie, but I've got quite a few. And I have truly, truly enjoyed my years in Carpinteria. When I came here from Fresno Unified, you know, all of the applications that I was filling out for the jobs, they all wanted a recommendation from my superintendent. And at the time, I just couldn't fathom why. You know, Fresno is a huge district, and we were constantly going through superintendents, and my superintendent had no idea who I was. And just because I taught at a summer school, my area superintendent knew me a little bit, so I figured, okay, that would have to do. But I just was like, why? You know, it would be such a superficial letter. But then when I came to Carpinteria and I realized what a family everybody is, I really then understood why they wanted a letter from my superintendent. And then exactly a couple of years later, we moved back to New Hampshire because my husband was coaching basketball. And I asked the superintendent at that time, Van Riley, I said, would you write me a letter? And he did. And when I was interviewing on the phone with them in New Hampshire, the superintendent there says, well, your superintendent says you do this and this and this in your classroom. Well, how does he know that? I said, because he's been in my room, you know, and you can only do that in a small district. And I have truly cherished and enjoyed and have felt honored by my years here in Carpinteria. So thank you, everybody.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And now, Gerardo, it's your turn to talk about Jean.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, let me tell you, Mr. Bisson and I pretty much started at the high school together. I remember working with him during the summer, and he came to work one day in a cast because he had broken his arm. And I asked him what happened. He goes, I got in a car accident before I got here, in a car accident, but I still felt that I needed to come to see my students. That's the type of teacher Mr. Bisson has been for the last 17 years at Carpinteria High School. First of all, Mr. Bisson will be greatly missed by everybody at Carpinteria High School. Mr. Bisson entered public school teaching after many years in the private sector. And a lot of people don't know, he started at Carpinteria High School as a Spanish teacher. After a few years, he moved to the Social Studies Department, where he has been instrumental in the success of our dual enrollment program with Santa Barbara City College. When Mr. Bisson learned that he needed a master's degree in order to teach dual enrollment sections at Carpinteria High School, he did what Mr. Bisson always did. He went out and got a master's degree over the summer, over a couple of years, and he earned that degree, and then all of a sudden he was teaching dual enrollment classes at Carpinteria High School. During the 17 years at Carpinteria High School, he has taught Spanish, like I mentioned before, dual enrollment U.S. history, political science, linguistics, AVID, and the very own American democracy class. And all board members know this because these are the students that up to March 13th showed up at every board meeting to observe in real person our democratic tradition of public meetings and how government works. Mr. Bisson was a pioneer in posting his lessons and assignments and lectures online. So when we moved to our virtual online courses on March 16th due to the COVID-19, he was ready, and his classes were already in March, and his students knew exactly what to do. Mr. Bisson has been very active in our school. He has been advisor to student clubs, chaperoned many dances, volunteered in every 15 minutes, and has always been there to support our students in whatever is needed to be done in order to make their educational experience more enjoyable. Mr. Bisson has made a great impact in the lives of our students. Many of them go on to college or into the workforce, and they always appreciate the skills that they've learned in Mr. Bisson's classes. Mr. Bisson has been a great teacher, colleague, and mentor to many of us, but the opportunity to get to know him has been an inspiration to all of us at Carpinteria High School. His willingness and always there to listen and be there for advice when it was needed, and has never been unnoticed. On behalf of all students, parents, and teachers and staff, we want to thank Mr. Bisson for the great opportunity that he has given us to learn more from him and to value and appreciate the teaching profession through everything that he does for Carpinteria High School. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Bisson.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gerardo.
Thank you.
Gina,
Okay.
do you want to say something? No?
Yeah, Sally, we're moving on.
Okay. We'll move on to D3, which is Resolution 2868, the Order of Election. May I have a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor? Oh, it's a roll call, Jamie.
All right, Andy? Andy here? He's on mute.
Aye.
All right. Sally,
Aye.
Rogelio. On mute also. Rogelio,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
and I'm aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to G, which is business operations and facilities, and our warrants for May 8th through May 21st in the amount of $1,516,525.84. May I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
A second?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm going to turn G2, Maureen, over to you for our board study session.
You're on mute.
She's on.
Diana? Yeah. All right. I'm gonna share my screen. Let me go back to the beginning. Okay, so this is going to be the first complete presentation of the preliminary 2021 budget. And it's a lot, there's a lot of slides. We're going to go through some of them more quickly, but I'm going to take some time on some of these because there's a lot of information. This is the estimated actuals, which is what we know now, which will change tomorrow on a lot of this, but we're gonna go more slowly through the budget items so that we can explain a lot of the changes. There's a lot of information here. As we've presented before in our budget presentations, we start out with our mission. I won't read it. We have our core values: academic achievement, respectful community, continuous improvement. And everything we're doing in the budget is aligning with these three core values. And then we have our district goals. I think even more important than ever, these goals are what we are living by, and especially in these times and increasing student learning. The distance learning has definitely challenged all of us, and the rest speaks for itself. Our core budgeting principles, again, you know, we're learning things and we're doing things and we're pushing ourselves beyond what we've normally done in the past. And it's turned all of us into learners and challenged us to be, make learning at the core of all of our decisions. And that's exactly what we're doing. And then I just want to remind everybody of that last bullet about the board policy and the reserve level of 10%. And we're going to talk about that when we get later into the presentation. We have our typical timeline. We provide monthly updates to the board. We've discussed in leadership some of the changes we're going to talk about. We've met through different site staff meetings. They've met with their staff and their teacher groups. And then again, we've presented the budget at the April meeting, and we've been presenting the budget consistently, I think, except for March because of the timeline and the, well, was going to be spring break, but with the COVID shutdown, we've done it every month since the beginning in the February board meeting. The timeline, this major timeline and major milestone slides changed a bit. You can see it's gone out to August, and I'm going to just explain a little bit of this slide. So last week, the governor announced his May revise. I watched I watched the governor's presentation, the governor's delivery of the May revise, school services and capital advisors. And I will say that they were all very consistently gloomy. So next, we present this budget to you, which is our
Don't worry. Tell her her, she's muted.
Sorry, I don't know. Where did you stop hearing me?
A minute
Can
ago.
you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Should I stay on this slide?
We stopped hearing you that it was extended to August.
Yes, okay, so the governor's May revise came out last week. I watched the governor, I watched school services and capital advisors, and they were all similarly depressing. The state has until June 15th to pass a budget, regardless of what they know or don't know. So by June 15th, the budget will be passed. On June 9th, the board will see have our first public hearing for the adopted budget, and then it will be our budget has to be adopted on June 23rd, no later than June 30th, but June 23rd is our board meeting date. But what we do know, and Diana talked about in her superintendent's update, is that both property taxes and personal income tax has been allowed to be deferred through the end of July. So state revenues will be unknown when they adopt a budget in June, as well as whether or not property taxes are affected and whether there will be property tax deferrals. Because this, again, I'll state it again, this isn't a housing crisis. The level of property tax reduction or non-reduction is really unknown. Santa Barbara County is what they call a teeter district, a teeter county, meaning that the districts in Santa Barbara County are guaranteed the taxes based on the tax bills sent out, not the taxes collected in December and April. So we're guaranteed this year the tax bill amount, regardless of what's collected for that tax year. That we hope will stay the same moving into 2021 and beyond. But I do know that there are Bay Area districts who are looking to repeal the teeter because they do anticipate property taxes will be down and the counties won't be able to handle that cash flow gap. So we're going to follow that closely. And then I will guarantee you that in August and possibly as late as September, the state will revise their
You're muted again.
Muted.
Still muted.
Maureen, can't hear. Monica. No.
Here.
Okay.
Okay. So there'll be budget revisions at the state level depending on state revenues, and the governor is hopeful, although I'm not sure I am, that there'll be any additional federal dollars to help states with these huge deficits. California is not alone in the deficits that they're facing. So the governors may revise for LCFF districts is a 2.31 COLA. That was what they projected in January, was a fully funded COLA. In May, they're saying 0 COLA and a deficit, on top of that, a deficit of 7.92, which nets the 10.23 reduction. Our property taxes we're estimating to be about a 3% increase, where we're typically around a 5%. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. The other thing that the governor put in his May revise was some pension increase relief. So the 2021 increase for STRS and PERS are not as high as projected originally. In fact, CalSTRS is going to be less than the 1920 year. And then the 2021 year again is not as high, but it picks back up in the 22-23 year into the higher levels and escalates even higher beyond that. So they've given this kind of temporary stay of pension increase, but it has to make up for it at some point later. And then you see the aggregate of the total statutory benefit in cost to salary. It's still, for classified, gets up to almost 35% in 3 years. The history of property taxes, I'll go to 1920. The total increase is a 4.51%. The unsecured, the secured was estimated at a 5. That's what we increase. And then there are always up and down adjustments year over year. And so it brought it down a 0.5%. And then we're estimating a 3% for the future years. And those other unsecured and other taxes change that to a little bit over 3%. This is our staffing chart for the 1920 year. For your information, I won't go through it. Cost of living increases. This is a chart you've seen before. 1920 negotiations have not concluded, so there's nothing to report. Slide 12, history of health and welfare increases. So the really good news is 1819, 1920, and now 2021 are both proposed to be historically low increases for our district. Santa Barbara County Schools is unique again to SISC in that each district owns its own rate. It's not composite for the county. Otherwise, you'd see this in the high single digits. This is a estimate 0.06 reduction, but we have an overall of about a 0.5 increase. It just depends on the plan, but this is the district paid plan. I'm not muted. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. You couldn't? Okay. So the 3-year average, looking at 18, 19, 19, 20, 21, 2021 is a 0.83 increase average, which is really low. We were told that by SISC, however, when we did the rate presentation, not to expect that again. We're really in an anomaly. So the 2021 cost of health and welfare is for a full-time is $20,148 a year. This is just a slide showing you the history of pension increases. You can see the escalation, although the 2021 year, that escalation was going to be in the like 25%. So you can see that we did get some relief there. Financial history. This is where we start talking. I'm going to see if I can move this. I can't. I've got faces in the way of my budget. So this is all unrestricted general fund. The 2021 preliminary is estimating a deficit of $140,000. Estimated actuals is an estimated deficit of $460,000, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Total general fund, estimated actuals for 1920, a deficit of 503. Preliminary, we're still at the 140, assuming categoricals are self-balancing, and that's what we're assuming always. You can see that in the estimated actuals, total general fund, we're still above our 3% minimum reserve, not by much. And in the 2021 budget, we're still above our 3% reserve by even less than not by much. 2021 revenue summary. So 87% now of our budget is property taxes and state aid. And state aid is a sliver of that. It's 1.2 million, less than $120,000. So we're not getting much in our total general fund of other money anymore. And what we do get in the rest of it in the federal program is basically our title programs and IDEA, and the state revenue is predominantly special ed. The local revenue of 1.1, that's mostly categorical. Most of that is special ed also. It's a category that we book that in. Total expenditures, 84% of our budget is being spent, just under 85% on salary and benefits. 3% on books and supplies, which is very low, 10% on operating and operating expenses, and that includes utilities and our contracts for technology, et cetera. The 2% other outgo is the transfers out. The other outgo are our lease payments, and then the transfer out are food services and deferred maintenance. I like this slide. This is one of my favorite slides. This is the total general fund by function and summary, and you can see that we are spending the majority of our budget, 56%, on direct classroom instruction, 10% on instruction-related services, which include those instruction-related services include the ancillary stuff. Pupil services includes our counselors and all of the health care services that we have. Athletics, community services are just our the expenses for facilities use. General admin, those are all of our that's district office and site admin, as well as all of the other costs that are not direct instruction or instruction support. And then our plant services, which is maintenance and utilities and custodial. And then the other outgo, again, are transfers and our lease payments. This is the definition of those different goals, different functions. And then this is special ed. 5-year summary with current year. Our estimated actuals are tracking about where we anticipated them, tracking about 74% of a general fund contribution to the program, which you can see historically is about where we were. And then for 2021, we're looking at 72%. We did receive in 2021 some additional SELPA dollars. I did estimate the special ed at a zero COLA. In the January governor's budget, he did propose one-time special ed preschool dollars as we got this year. That's out. So it's really uncertain whether or not we will be receiving a COLA for special ed. There is proposed increased SELPA funding, but we do not know how that will filter down to the districts. So now we get into the actual 2021 budget assumptions. So we're going to start with revenues, and the anticipated or the estimated actuals for 1920 are 21,521,590, 21 million. We're estimating only a 3% property tax this year, which is 698,399. I'm going to stay with 3%, and you'll see, as we get towards the end, you'll see other scenarios. That's probably our best case. 10% reduction to minimum state aid, which you heard about already. 10% of our 1.2 million is 125.01 reduction. And then we have a lot of one-time money in 1920 that's actually helping our position this year that we have to take out next year because it's revenue that we will not have. We have some federal revenue, which is MAW. We have the special ed preschool funding we will not get next year. We have some wildfire refund money, which came in from the Thomas Fire. Got it. We have the 1920 SB 117, which is the state COVID-19 relief of $36,059 that we're going to get this year that we won't get next year. Reduction in lottery. They're anticipating about a 15% reduction in lottery sales as storefronts were closed and not able to sell lottery tickets. We anticipate a reduction in rents and leases as we have our Baylor property sale coming up, and we may be giving notice in the mid-year. Lower cash means lower interest. And then miscellaneous local revenue, that is basically the ransomware CISC payment this year that we won't have next year. That's all we got for that ransomware attack. Of the 12.6 and the 13.7. The Thomas Fire, we did get our final CISC payment for the Thomas Fire this year of 115. That'll be out next year. We got and I think I mentioned this at the second interim, we got a SIPE rebate, or at the last update, one-time workers' comp fund rebate of $385,000. We won't have that revenue next year. We have a transfer in from Measure U this year for paying the teachers' moves. That's how we have to get that money back from Measure U. And then we get to the contributions, both for special ed and restricted maintenance. Special ed has an additional, has a reduced has an increased contribution of $41,393. It would have been higher, but we did get additional SELPA dollars. I'm sorry, I have a tickle. And then the restricted maintenance account. So I'm going to talk about that for a second. The restricted routine maintenance account was established in Ed Code to guarantee both, it's not just part of the Williams Act, but to guarantee that we maintain our facilities. If we have state funds coming in to modernize or build or repair our facilities. So the Ed Code says you must maintain 3% of the general fund set aside into the RRMA. In prior...
Lost you.
In prior recessions, most recently from the housing crisis, the state has relieved that part of Ed Code that says you must put 3% in from the general fund to RRMA, and given you flexibility to make a lesser contribution. So I'm assuming the same level of contribution as we had in the current year. Otherwise, that would have gone up next year about $150,000. So this is reducing the contribution to RMA, to the restricted maintenance account of $33,500, and maintaining our $100,000 to deferred maintenance, which we have to do. So that's an assumption. I'm banking on the fact that they're going to give us that flexibility. I listened to another webinar today and from John Gray at School Services, and this is most likely something the governor will give, and the legislature understands, but we'll probably not know until next month. So we're changing revenues by less revenue of $475,170 going into next year. So next year we have 2.21% less revenue than we did in the current year. Going into the drivers and the expenditure side, these are the drivers, the things that happen consistently year over year. Step and column increases. This, you see the 0.5 health and welfare. We estimated 3.5%. The cost to us is just about $15,000. Our pension increases, you see over prior year, a decrease in STRS of 0.6 and an increase of CalPERS of 0.98. Those were both 2 and almost 3% increases. So this is the changes here are really giving us some relief. We're estimating utility increases, and I'm going to tell you that even closed, the utility companies are raising their rates, and we're seeing higher costs. Property and liability increase, we already know that. And then there's these assignment adjustments that happen throughout the year, where last year you may have had a position vacant for a month, and this next year it's filled, you have a full year cost. So they kind of come and go, but they wash out to be an increase of about $13,000. And then we're reducing the contribution to the cafeteria fund of $92,977 based on the assumption that we're going to make some reductions in the program. So the drivers are increasing our budget by $157,953,000. There's no cost of living in here. I gave you an estimate, one cost of living cost, and just as a note. And so the change in just the drivers is about a 0.72 over prior year. We are proposing to add one more teacher to the DLI cohort, and the cost you see here. And then we have some proposed budget reduction options, and we have 2 teacher retirements that we're building in through attrition. One is the high school social studies and the middle school science position. We were able to roll those into current staffing. And then we had 2 full-time long-term contract teachers, and for folks that are on leave, that means we were paying double. We're going to take those 2 temp contracts out. That's a savings. We currently have a custodial vacancy. I will let you know that this probably won't be something we'll be saving moving forward. And then what I did for the estimated actuals and for the 2021 budget is I assumed that we'll be distance learning for a portion of the year. And there are some costs that are associated with on-site classroom. And so I took site budgets and reduced them a percentage, program budgets, meaning district office and non-site budgets, and reduced them a percentage. And then I looked at athletics and reduced transportation costs, etc., knowing that we may not have a full year of sports. Those are all just assumptions at this point, and they will change as we have more information. So the reductions are $1,036,159, about 4.71% reduction over last year. So when I put that all together for the expenditures, we have for the 1920 estimated actuals, 21.982214. We add our drivers, we add our program improvements, we build in the estimated reductions, and we have a total reduction in expenditures of $795,386. So we lost revenue and we're lowering our expenditures. So what that looks like, putting it all together, and this is just the unrestricted portion, is we project to start 2021 with $1.1 million in fund balance, $20,046 in revenue, $21,186 in expense, with a deficit of $140,407. Our ending balance is down below $1 million at $983,440 at a 3.28% reserve. And I will remind you, and I'll go into the multi-year, that this is with a 3% property tax built in this year, a 4 and a 4. So that brings me to the multi-year. So assuming that property taxes as presented, that I just presented to you, are 3% in 2021, 4 in year 2, and 4 in year 3, and I'm going to tell you this is the best case scenario. This is what we're looking at as an estimated multi-year. 3.28, 3.2, and 4.78. I will say at this point that the conversation today, and one of the things the governor said at his May revise was, well, districts, you have a statewide average of 17% reserves. Some of you may have 0 and some of you may have 80%, but overall statewide it's 17%. So he kind of made it like we have plenty of money to bail us out of this dilemma, which we don't. So today, one of the things I heard is that the state understands, which is the message that goes to our county offices and schools, that some districts will not be able to, and I think we're fortunate, some districts will not be able to maintain 3%, which is our statutory requirement for the current and 2 subsequent years. There was a statement made that probably half of the districts in the state of California, if they present it without any reductions, will be negative next year, meaning they have no cash for payroll. They're assuming districts will have to dip into their reserves, with the expectation that the counties, when they do their review, will say, give us your plan to build your reserves back. So it's never a good idea to get below that 3%, because you will have to build it back up. And that isn't that it's like delaying pain. However, we have to do what we have to do. Right now, I'm showing you a scenario where all 3 years have a minimum reserve with a little bit of extra cushion. So I'm going to give you a couple more scenarios. Scenario 2, we have property tax increase of 1% year 1, 2% year 2, and 3% year 3. That's assuming that it's really not good next year and it slowly builds back up only to 3%. To get to the reserve levels you see, I had to, in the second year, 21-22, you can see is the challenging year to get 3%. I had to reduce the budget by $757,000. In scenario 3, I'm projecting 2% across all 3 years. I still have to reduce 757, but the reserve levels go back into the 5s. So that shows by reductions of that amount of money, we get a little bit healthier all 3 years out. And then the final scenario is the worst scenario with a 0% increase in the 2021 year, meaning we don't, it's really bad, and only a 2% in the next 2 years. And these are all very assumptuous, is that we have to cut $1 million, and that's to get 3% in the second and third year. And you can see that's not even, with $1 million reduction, it barely gets us a little over 3%. Excuse me. So what we don't know, if the cuts to basic aid will go beyond the 10% minimum guarantee. There is an Ed Code statutory limit that says our minimum state guarantee cannot go below what we were getting when we went basic aid. So it's not likely that, and without repealing that piece of Ed Code, we'll get less than 120, but they could make these cuts other ways. So we have to understand that this is not off the table. We don't know what the property tax collections are going to look like, most likely until late summer, if not into maybe September. And again, that makes it very difficult to project. Any additional CARES dollars from the state. So in the governor's revise, he said, districts, you got your CARES money, and that we've already built into the budget. It's restricted, and those are covering all our distance learning costs. And that's this year only. But I'm going to give you my CARES money. Those are the ERA dollars, the ESSA dollars that are coming under Title I. But he's also said that he's only going to give those to the most needy schools per the LCFF supplemental and concentration grant amount. In our supplemental and on our LCF calculation, which we have to do the calculation anyways, we have supplemental and concentration grant dollars in the allocation because we have a high free and reduced rate. That doesn't mean we're going to get anything if he gives CARES money back out. He may not give it to any basic aid, saying we're not cutting you like we are everybody else. So that's something we're watching. If the federal government provides any additional relief to the states, I'm not holding my breath on that one. And then the big question, how fast will the economy recover? Will there be a potential second wave of COVID cases in the fall, and how does that affect us? And as schools, I don't mean us specifically. And, we don't have the plan as it's going to be identified yet in August, although there's a lot of talk about what it's going to look like all over the country. And then what we do know is that the state must adopt a budget by June 15th. We won't know the revenues until the fall at best. Additional state cuts can occur in September and October. And I've been through many recessions, and it does happen. And we just need to be flexible, nimble, we need to be responsive, and we need to make sure that our information is accurate and maintained daily. As information changes daily, we have to be able to respond to that daily. And that is the budget presentation.
Thank you, Maureen. That's a lot of work.
A lot.
And not easy.
Well, it's not a fun year to do it.
No.
No.
Okay. Are you taking questions at this time?
I will, yes.
Yes. Any questions?
I I think I knew the answer to this before, but I've forgotten it. But it, it looks like our special education contribution has doubled over the last few years. And what is that due to? Is that due to increase in IEPs or?
Yes.
Okay.
So I will tell you that it is increased in designated services, and probably I'm sure that many special ed folks will agree it's in the autism spectrum disorders, but it's also increased because of right now we have some ongoing non-public school placements for kids that have severe behavioral disruption that need to be in a more therapeutic setting that we can't provide. And those are very costly, and they're not going to go away.
Any other questions?
I had a question, Sally.
Go ahead, Andy.
So, Maureen, so the reduction to our transfers to the cafeteria fund was about $92,977, correct?
Right.
Okay, so but we're still gonna, even with those reductions, based on our historical transfers, we're still deficit spending there into the cafeteria fund, correct?
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. So let me explain the cafeteria fund that doesn't go in the general fund, but it needs to be covered. So going into 2021, this is what we know. In all likelihood, we're probably not going to be coming back 100% into classroom settings, because the food service program is funded on paid lunches, sales, paid reduced lunches, and free and reduced participation. Those revenues we can assume aren't going to be there the first part of next year. So we know our revenue is going to be down greatly right out the bat. So even when we build in the reductions that are being proposed in a future agenda item on the board, we know that our revenues are taking a huge hit, probably to the tune of at least a 40 to 45% reduction in revenue also next year. So how do we manage that? And that's the big key. So again, the central kitchen concept allows us to not have 4 full operating kitchens. It has economies. We will most likely be, at least for the first part of next year and possibly the whole year, doing sack lunches, which is not necessarily cheaper, because the commodities that we've already ordered, which had to be ordered in January for next year, are based on hot food cooking also. So now we have the commodities we purchased, but we also have to purchase sack lunch type items, including breakfast sack items. So there's a lot of stuff in here. And so we're going to continue to reevaluate the program as we know more about what school will look like and how we're going to be serving lunch and how many we'll be serving too. But we do know that we will not have the revenue base that we've had in traditional settings going forward. And also what we don't know for the food program is we're currently operating under a waiver, several waivers. But the most significant are that you can operate under the Seamless Summer right now during school, which says any student up to the age of 18, whether they're your student or not, can eat in a household. That means if they drive up and they take 7 lunches, we get 7 lunch part reimbursements. And even with that program, we're down to, a third of what we're doing, 40% of what we're normally doing. They haven't provided that waiver past August 31st. And they just extended it to August 31st for the summer. The other waiver that we've got is to be able to serve remotely and in multiple locations other than our schools, meaning that we could go to Monte Vista Park and serve it, and we can have them moved out to other sites that we can be able to deliver lunches. That waiver has not been approved past August 31st, as well as the fact that all we know now is that when we get back to school, it's the National School Lunch Program on free, paid, and reduced meals. And if that's the case, then our revenue will be even further down, because kids won't take lunch if they have to buy it. in all likelihood, depending on what we're going to do. So there's a lot of assumptions we just don't know right now.
And we still are operating under the governor's rule that even if a student is running unpaid bills, we can't not provide lunches to them. Correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Even if they have the means to pay.
Right. We can't ask if they have the means to pay.
Yeah.
I have two follow-ups. Where's the proposed central kitchen going to be? Which campus? And then is there going to be some costs associated with equipment to transport food? And how's the personnel going to work around that?
So we're looking at the high school. It has the biggest kitchen and it can accommodate the size, the volume that we need. There's a lot of logistics that we're talking about. One specifically is transporting the meals to the schools. And so Michelle Hernandez, the coordinator, and I have been talking about what that looks like. And we don't anticipate at the beginning of the school year having any real additional costs other than maybe because we're not going to be serving any hot meals. So we don't have any warmers to keep, to have to transport. They have these big warming trays that you put into trucks. But there's also alternatives to keep things warm at temperatures that will suit, that aren't these big carts. And we do have the vehicle, I believe, that will be sufficient, and the van's sufficient to do the transport now with staff. But the plan isn't completely vetted yet, because a lot of it depends on what we are going to look like when we come back to school, and whether we turn it. We're hoping to go to traditional mid-year, meaning in the second semester, or late in the winter. I mean, we just don't know. So part of that model we have in place now to plan for the grab and go lunches, and that doesn't require any more equipment that we have, because we aren't going to be transporting home to school, so we have the drivers that are able to pack it out, and then the staff will go and serve it at the schools.
Sorry, I have one more follow-up question then. So how many staff would be needed for the central kitchen, and then how many staff would be needed to distribute at the school sites?
So again, it's a difficult answer at this point because we don't know what we'll look like when we come back to school in the fall. So in the current model, we have 3 staff at every school, including the coordinator. So that's 13 folks. And what we do know is we don't need 13 people. Michelle has operated volume kitchens, and so she's very familiar with how to estimate these things, but we're working on that plan right now, and I don't have all of the answers.
Question?
Any further? Jamie?
Yeah, is there a requirement that we have to serve hot meals, or can they always just be grab and go meals?
So that's a good question, and that again will depend. What we serve really depends on whether they provide waivers for what we do serve. So if they don't provide waivers with what we serve.
Oh, we lost you, Maureen.
You're muted.
Sorry, I got it. So what we do serve is really dependent on whether or not we get waivers on the meal components. If we have to serve the meal components under traditional program, even a grab and go cold meal is going to be very expensive because you have to have, all the rainbow of color vegetables, etc., portion servings. So that's all something we're going to probably see change probably by the end of July, but we probably won't know until then. And hot meals are part of the requirements.
Any further questions? Thank you so much, Maureen. That is a lot.
No problem.
We'll move on to H, Measure U. And H1 is the purchase of TVs and mounts with WIP Inc. and Apple TVs.
Excuse me. Rahili has a question.
Oh, sorry. Rahil,
Yes, yes. All right, so I've read that the food services program has seen a decline on student participation for the last 4 years. So I was wondering why, because that's too long, 4 years.
I don't know about the last 4 years, but I know the last 2 years it's seen a considerable decline.
Yeah, it's on the report, on Diana's report.
No, I don't think the participation talked about the participation over the last several years. It talked about the contribution from the general fund. But the student participation has been going down over the past couple of years, and we're hoping to increase that, yes.
So I was wondering about the reasons for that.
There's lots of reasons. I've heard that kids just don't want to eat in the cafeteria. I've heard they don't necessarily like the meal choices. I've heard all kinds of reasons, none that really can be narrowed down to all sites. I think it's a lot of different compounded reasons. I wouldn't say it's down like 30. It's hard to nail down the reasons. They're kind of all over the place.
Okay, all right.
okay.
Okay.
So we'll move on to H, Measure U. The purchase of TVs and mounts with WIP Inc. and Apple TVs for campus modernization at the high school. May I have a motion to approve this?
Move to approve?
Second.
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 Are there any questions? All those in
Yeah, I have a comment on that. So if, there is how many TVs are going to be new? 30 of them?
14.
14, let's see.
Oh, 30.
30 of them. So
No. They're
14.
TVs,
14.
and then the Apple TV is the component for the TV.
okay.
Part of Measure U. It's been in the plan for 5 years.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you. May I have a vote? May I have all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, we'll move on to personnel. I1 is a resolution number 2867 regarding abolishment of positions for classified personnel due to lack of work and or lack of funds. Maureen, can you give us some background on this?
So this is relating to both the ongoing deficit in the food service program, as well as the conversation that I know I've had since I've been with Carpinteria, and you know, with the compounding loss with the COVID crisis, it's the time to move, is to implement a central kitchen concept. And so we're proposing to go from 4 team leaders, which we have 1 at every school, to 1 team leader. So that's reducing 3 team leaders, 1 which is Julie Hathaway's position, and she's retired, so it's vacant. And then the other 2 team leader positions we're proposing to eliminate. So eliminating these positions will incite bumping into lower classifications. But we don't, you know, we know we need to reduce costs. And as I just mentioned, this is a concept that we've been talking about for at least since I've been here, heavily for about 2 or 3 years. And with the leadership in the kitchen that we've had in the past, it just did not manifest. So we have a very good leader in there. And I think that this is the ideal time to make it happen.
And obviously we'll be cutting more and there will be more deficit down the line.
Possibly.
Yes. So I'm going to hold off on the vote until we hear the union's response from Jay Hotchner.
Ready? Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, to begin, thank you for recognizing the district's obligation to include the union in this discussion. Union leadership and those we represent certainly believe that decisions associated with employee layoffs benefit from the perspectives and experience that union leadership is uniquely positioned to share. Just to clarify, as many of you are not familiar with CAUSE, CAUSE is the Carpinteria Association of United School Employees. We are the only employee union in the district. Our leadership team is elected by those who work directly with the district students and their families on a day-to-day basis. And for the record, regardless of any private or personal conversations that administrators like to claim they're having with individual employees, and then add weight to those conversations or make extrapolations upon those conversations, CAUSE, the union, is the only body in the district that is both capable and legally permitted to speak on behalf of the interests and the experience of CUSD's classified and certificated workforce. Today, with this layoff resolution, the CUSD school board and community of Carpinteria are being asked to consider making cuts to the labor force in the district. Recommending these layoff actions sit CUSD administrators, Ms. Rigby, Ms. Zapata, Ms. Fitzgerald, who in the midst of perhaps the greatest educational uncertainty experienced in the modern age, are now promoting the removal of select essential positions in the district. In this time of crisis, with so much still uncertain, and that's just been confirmed, many times over this evening, with so much still uncertain, and before even clarifying the path forward, these administrators are asking you, the school board, and the community to support the removal of district food service positions that were just recently confirmed and demonstrated to be of a critical nature and essential to the well-being of both our school district and the community that they serve, the community we serve. These administrators have justified their decision, as they often do, under the premise of their predictions upon program restructuring, budget shortfalls, and administrative efficiencies. On the other hand, or other side of this discussion, are the essential workers themselves. And I don't use the word essential lightly or simply for effect. I think you all are aware of what that means, but just to make sure, these employees who just so happen to be our colleagues, our neighbors, and fellow community members have been officially declared essential workers. Not just by myself, not by union leadership, but by the state, by Ed Code, and by the very administrators that are now acting to remove their positions from the district. I'd like to show you an image of some of these essential workers performing service just after the closures were announced in March of 2020. And although many of you have seen the photo, I'd just like to remind you of who some of these people are. And let's see, there. You might have seen this photo running around. This was published, I believe it was published either in the Coastal View News or maybe it was published on the district website. And well, there's Julie right there, one of our retirees. And there's Stacy, a transportation worker. And there's Magali, who will be impacted directly by the cuts that the district's proposing. Again, shortly after the district closed, these essential workers were called in to provide service. I believe I've just stopped screen sharing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. The image captured a a glance into the shape of the essential contribution and sacrifice that these essential workers provide and provided. Ironically, our administrative leaders are now recommending that these very positions be removed from the district. Shortly after these employees reported to work during the outset of the COVID-19 closures, risking, to remind everyone, their personal safety and well-being, and the well-being of their families, given what they may have brought home, to ensure the well-being of the most at-risk and needy in our community. Now they're being reclassified in the eyes of the district. Just weeks ago, they were essential. And now this administrative team considers them expendable. If it weren't so sad, it would be ironic, almost funny. And here's a quote from our superintendent, Diana Rigby, when she applauded their essential service and encouraged the community to recognize their sacrifice. On April 3rd, Ms. Rigby wrote, "Good morning," out to the staff. "I hope this email finds you and your family and friends healthy and safe. We are thrilled with CUSD's transition to remote learning in such a short time and applaud all of you for working diligently to serve our school community during this challenging crisis. More than 1,000 laptops have been distributed, 100 hotspots were ordered and distributed and received. Free Wi-Fi has been offered by Cox. 200 breakfast lunches are handed out daily. And CUS students are continuing to learn remotely via Google Classroom, Zoom, and district software programs. Amazing. I am proud of how CUSD is working together." I want you to remember that line. I'm proud of how CUSD is working together to navigate remote learning, social distancing, the digital divide, food insecurities, and district operations during the school closure. You rock. And on April 14th at the CUSD board meeting, Ms. Rigby doubled down on that same sentiment in her superintendent's report. And I'd like to again share my screen.
Yes, superintendent's report. Superintendent's report. Great. So I'd like to begin by recognizing and thanking the entire CUSD community for working together to navigate this crisis. I've witnessed impressive leadership, professionalism, dedication, and creativity from our administrators, teachers, and staff as classrooms were transitioned to remote learning using new ways of teaching. The district office staff, transportation, and maintenance have kept the district operating while the food services coordinator and lead cafeteria workers provide daily lunches for our students. And as of tomorrow, that will be more than 500 lunches.
Have I stopped screen sharing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you again. What you'll notice between the 3rd and the 14th is that the role of these essential workers had only become more essential with time, which is continuing even today. More essential with time. After watching Ms. Rigby's applause, you can, or you must imagine the union's surprise when we were notified that the district intended to cut these very positions that were so applauded and so cited as being the kind of district and people that we are. Is this what you meant, Ms. Rigby? You know, your recommendation to turn essential workers into expendable workers, is that what it means to work together? In her statement, I am so proud of how CUSD is working together. In her recommendation to the school board, Ms. Rigby's administrative team has clarified its belief that these employee cuts are necessary. Again, under the premise of program restructuring, budget shortfalls, and predicted administrative efficiencies. Predictions, again, based on lots of information that is terribly unclear, as confirmed by Ms. Fitzgerald over and over in her budget PowerPoint. Yet when the union inquired upon the details, similar to the inquiry that you as well were offering, Ms. Bray, I believe it was. When the union inquired upon the details these administrators based their predictions and their decision upon, very little was provided beyond very general statements like the ones we received this evening from Ms. Fitzgerald. Very general statements that they have plans to restructure food service. When the union asked the district to demonstrate how it arrived at the alleged almost $200,000 savings, the district did not, it would not, and it appears it could not respond with specific. When the union asked what the replacement costs would be after the services provided by these workers were redistributed, similar to the question that I think Ms. Bray just asked, what's this going to look like, this restructuring? Explain it. The district did not, would not, and we believe could not provide clarification because, as they said, quote, they had not gotten that far. Because, quote, they have yet to determine how the replacement food service program will operate in the future. And that's not because of COVID. That's because they just haven't really figured out what it's going to look like yet. Beyond knowing the preferred location of the restructured model, Carpinteria High School, I appreciate you confirming that again, Ms. Fitzgerald. The plan remains terribly unclear. Be it how distribution is going to work, be it staffing levels, be it food costs, or savings. When the union asked upon how the district could justify this seemingly impulsive and dramatic shift in the value of these specific essential services and essential workers, the union was told that the district needn't justify such behavior and action, and that it was the district's prerogative and discretion to make decisions such as these. Well, that's neither a justification nor an explanation. It does suggest some sensitivity around power issues, though. And when we asked upon whether the district had considered the human impact of what we considered such short-sighted decision-making based on the alleged savings that under scrutiny simply did not materialize or hold up, Human Resource Director Zapata fired back, we are not reducing employees, we are reducing positions. We lay off positions, not people. And this encapsulates a large part of the problem from the union's understanding. You see, Ms. Rigby and Ms. Fitzgerald and Ms. Zapata are prone to say that the CUSD is not laying off people, they're laying off positions, as quoted by Ms. Zapata. A technicality that, although partially true, is certainly not the entire truth. And I think we all know that. One can only imagine what kind of mental gymnastics a person has to go through to operate on such a conclusion. For those of us who exist and work in the world where people occupy these positions, and where people perform the essential service, we are definitely talking about people, not just positions. And although it's convenient to dismiss that fact when making such decisions, it's neither realistic nor is it terribly humane, nor is it working together, like we hear kind of in rhetorical fashion so often from our district leadership. When the union asks you to consider the people impacted by these poorly justified decisions, remember that we are not just talking about any old people either. We're talking about the very people who provided the most at-risk members of our community the very essential services that kept many of Carpinteria's kids and their families fed, healthy, and able to endure up to now the recent COVID-19 closures. Closures that have turned this community on its head, let alone the nation and the state, and apparently the world. And hey, you know, if you're also having a hard time believing that the CUSD is simply, and I quote our resource director Zapata, we're only cutting positions, not people. If you're having a hard time swallowing that and accepting that, you are not alone. The day that a position needs to go to the doctor experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, but can't because the district cut the position's healthcare, all believe administration's overly simplified summary that we're only cutting positions, not people. The day that a position is stuck in a line at Albertsons or Smart and Final or CVS, trying to decide between whether it can afford the milk or the bread or the butter that its family needs, because the CUSD laid the position off and reduced the position's hourly wage, I'll be able to accept administration's overly simplified explanation that they're cutting positions, not people. The day that a position has to wrestle with whether it is more financially stable if it seeks unemployment versus serving the community, our community, and remaining employed with the CUSD, all the while the district removes critical hours from said position's work week, cutting their take-home pay, even further cutting the position's take-home pay, the position's pay. Union leadership will understand this the same way Ms. Rigby and Ms. Zapata and Ms. Fitzgerald do, that it's about positions, it's not about people. But for now, we can't. And in truth, either should you, because positions will never experience those things. People will. Our colleagues, people who have demonstrated their loyalty to this school district and this community, day after day after day after day. Real living people, not positions, like these loyal district employees and their family members who will be directly impacted by the district's layoff actions. And not just impacted, but harmed by the district's layoff actions. They didn't flinch, they didn't turn away, they didn't run when the district needed their essential service. And here's what we're rewarding them with. Just the other day, when meeting with Human Resource Director Zapata, again, stating that it isn't about people, she also said, and it isn't personal. Well, we suspect it must look that way when one has recently received, or from the team of administrators who have recently received thousands of dollars in administrative pay increases, that have recently received extra administrative support staff that never existed prior to the arrival of Superintendent Rigby, that also have recently received several accolades from you, the school board, for a job well done. Some of those well-deserved. Not this one, though. From union leadership's optic, and the majority of those our union represents, especially those being directly impacted by the layoff resolution, you can bet this is personal, because it is personal. And because we've been encouraged by the same administrators who are making this decision to believe that it should be personal, that we should invest more than just our professional abilities. It is personal, isn't it? Until, of course, that isn't a convenient talking point. And now we're hearing a complete reversal. They were essential, now they're expendable. You see, the service provided by district employees is personal. Why they chose to do this work is personal. Short-sighted administrative decision-making has a very personal impact. the failure to work and think creatively about how to support both the district, its students, by simultaneously supporting district employees is personal. The loyalty that these essential workers demonstrated to this district and this community was and remains personal. And no matter how much these district administrators try to tell you, the board and the community, that it isn't, we all know that the district is not just cutting positions, it's cutting people. Your neighbors, your fellow community members. And in doing so, it's not only undermining the stability of these individuals, but it's undermining the stability of the community, the confidence of the remaining CUSD employees, and in the end, the entire teaching and learning model that is supported by these very essential services. Kids that don't eat well consistently tend to underperform. It is one of the most consistent data points that our superintendent sees year after year after year. Now, to review this decision in the context of history is even more alarming.
Mr. Hotchner, I'd like to give you only about less than 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Ms. Green. I'm doing my best to be clear and comprehensive.
And repetitive.
I have not provided any time limit prior to this, but I will do my best to meet your new time limit.
Thank you.
So as I was saying, to review this decision in the context of history is even more alarming. And we heard confirmation of what I'm ready to share just a moment ago again from Ms. Fitzgerald. Please go back and review Ms. Fitzgerald's responses and remarks based on the questions Ms. Bray provided. Were any of you, or are any of you, aware that this is the third time in 3 years that the CUSD has restructured food service, has made drastic changes to food service, has hired a new food service supervisor, which has in effect turned the program on its ear? Each time a new food service supervisor has resigned, each time that happened, the new food service supervisor has resigned. Each time, the highest levels of district leadership have faulted the very supervisors they are responsible for supervising. Each time, district leadership has postured in public, sharing grand plans for the future and restructuring, trying to appear relevant and in charge, only to have all that planning and rhetoric fall flat for yet another year of fiscal losses and inefficiency. And when that time for accountability comes, it seems everyone but those at the highest level of the system suffer the most. The food service supervisors are fed up and they leave due to lack of support and what seems like obstruction from the very people that are supposed to be supervising them. The employees are harmed, the students are harmed. These proposed food service layoffs expose a pattern that has occurred under your leadership, Ms. Rigby. And the union begs you to look into this. And the union begs our school board members to look into this before making decisions. Because this pattern, and here's the pattern. First, alleged savings are predicted. But there's very little demonstration about how they're actually going to be achieved. You just saw that this evening with Ms. Fitzgerald's responses to some very foundational and basic questions. Then, second, there's the announcement of a new restructuring plan and a new supervisor. We're gonna redo this, we're gonna change it. We're gonna save a lot of money. More allegations and claims. Third, when challenged about that, we hear grandstanding in public for the third year in a row. about how hard it is to make these decisions. We haven't heard that yet tonight, but I'm sure it's coming. Fourth, and this is the part that only you, the school board, can change, what continues to appear like an uncritical rubber stamp by the school board is offered to the resolutions for layoffs. Fifth, the same feckless administrative implementation that's plagued previous food service programs year after year, supervisor after supervisor, the same feckless administrative implementation occurs. And finally, and certainly predictably, we get the same result. Additional fiscal overruns well beyond the routine expectations. And I'm not, living in a delusional land. The union understands that food service is not a profit center for our school district, but we don't need to be bleeding money at the rate that we do through this program. That is a failure of leadership. Look, folks, cause leadership understands that Superintendent Rigby desires to appear relevant and in charge in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Nobody likes to admit that they have become even a bit less relevant in the eyes of those who they are tasked to lead. This COVID-19 pandemic has many of us reassessing the roles we have served in and around our community, especially a superintendent who likes to talk about her broad shoulders and her fearless decision-making. This is the first thing you ever said to me, Ms. Rigby, commenting on your broad shoulders and fearless decision-making. I took you at your word. But leadership is more than simple decision-making. Those decisions must be well-informed. And one would hope that those decisions would be oriented to serve the interests of those that we're responsible for serving and those we're responsible for leading. Once again, union leadership asks and encourages the CUSD school board to open, I'm gonna change that. We ask the CUSD school board to just simply act thoughtfully and strategically and scrutinize the facts that exist and demand the facts that don't exist. And there are many. In short, please do your job with diligence and fidelity. You are all capable of that. And this community relies on you for that. Finally, union leadership would like to share a few alternatives that we proposed in an effort to resolve some of the district's fiscal concerns. Rather than act impulsively and in the most what appears extreme layoff manner, we encourage a lesser action, one that would go some distance to resolving the distance predicted fiscal concerns, while keeping people, students, employees, and their families in the center of the district's decision-making. Not just the bottom line, not just the numbers game based on reserve balances. The first proposal we suggested was that rather than reduce these employees' hours, their hourly wage, and their access to all the district's healthcare insurance benefits in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, couldn't we soften the impact on these individuals by providing them the same full-time service they've come to rely upon? Wouldn't this still allow the CUSD significant savings? You'd still be able to cut these employees' wages, and you'd still be able to save through attrition on an entire position, healthcare, hourly wage, an entire lead position. We would have provided you a firm number for this. Trust me, we like data. We push data in front of you all the time when we're in other meetings. And we would have provided you a firm number, but when the union asked for the hard data to clarify this proposal, the district would not, did not, and apparently could not provide the union with any specifics. Another proposal we had was that rather than submit the resolution to the school board with an expectation that the board make a decision immediately, we begged district administration to include a recommendation. I have not seen the recommendation included yet. Our recommendation was that the board wait to make these layoff decisions until the district has much better clarified the shape of the new food service program that will replace the old food service program. Wouldn't this provide much more certainty about the alleged savings and professional needs in 2020, 2021? Shouldn't we be making evidence-based decisions? We hear you promoting that nonstop across the district when it's convenient. Yet, we don't hear a lot of that right now. Certainly not in Ms. Fitzgerald's responses to the questions she received. The third proposal that we suggested was that rather than submit the resolution with the expectation that the board make a decision immediately, we encourage district administration to include a recommendation that the school board has clarified what school reopening after COVID-19 closures really looks like. Talk about shooting in the dark. And we understand your need to be relevant and make decisions, district leaders, but not when those decisions are based on the utter absence of information. Until we receive clarity on these matters of strategic planning, does it make sense to both reduce and further demoralize CUSD staff during the pandemic when all of our research suggests that the CUSD will need increased support from the very kinds of people that you're looking at, our classified ranks? Aren't we going to need more custodial sanitary workers? Doesn't it look like there'll be an increased need moving forward? Have we already seen an increased need for academic online aid support? Did LA just recently publish in their reopening plan that they are actually, and that most districts in the nation are talking about increased restroom attendance and monitors because that is going to be the center of transmission when kids go back? We're talking about a new food distribution program. Are there not going to be increased food distribution needs? Are there not going to be more reimbursement opportunities? Are we not going to have increased media literacy support? Aren't we seeing it already? Or increased secretarial services and direct contact with families while we're discussing this variety of academic schedules and online services that are going to, and we've learned this the hard way, they are going to require both parent support and fluency. Rather than letting go of people at this time, maybe it would be best to be considering how we might repurpose them to perform some of these other essential duties that we know are coming down the pike. For those of you that aren't aware, about a week ago, Santa Barbara Unified School District School Board was just presented with the same administrative recommendation. But they did their research and they listened to the variety of stakeholders impacted by the decision. They put the entire community and the well-being of people ahead of their ability to increase their bottom line. They did not oversimplify or simply defer to district administration and the bean counter, and they voted the resolution down. And they preserved the essential service, the essential positions, and the essential people who provided so much to so many across their community. This option exists for the Carpinteria Unified School District. The union encourages the school board to consider how can you move forward in the same spirit of humanity and concern for the people who have demonstrated their loyalty and their capacity, both personal and professional, for the district and our students and our families. I hope that was under 5 minutes, Ms. Green.
Right. Thank you. Can I have a motion on resolution number 20?
And I am entirely open, by the way, to taking any questions if you'd like.
Does anybody have any questions?
Are we going to have a discussion time, or do you have? Okay.
We
Do
have
you
to
need
get,
us a motion first? Okay.
so,
I move to approve.
Second.
second,
So discussion time?
is there a discussion?
Yeah, Maureen, I don't know if you know this, but earlier in the budget presentation, you talked about, I can't remember, 3% of our budget goes to books and supplies. With the upcoming unknowns of what fall's gonna look like, were we anticipating any like textbook purchases or in-class materials that we will not be needing to spend money on in the fall?
So we're not going to do any new textbook adoptions. And I did reduce the on-site supplies that we may not need by a percentage, not like for the year or for the half a year. But I recognize that classroom supplies, instructional materials can't be reduced. There will still need to be all of the distance learning materials that we'll have to keep acquiring.
Like the
part of the 3%.
Like the Chromebooks and stuff, or?
So there is a level of technology in there built in, so the purchases we made this year are all incurred in the current year costs that we related to the distance learning impacts. All the new stuff that we had to buy, including Chromebooks, those are all in the current year costs. But we did maintain some of that in next year so that we recognize that distance learning may still have increased instructional costs.
But we don't have that kind of itemized at this time.
In the way of what type of, like, I do know what systems that we are using, and all of those are built in detail, but what do you mean?
So I guess, I'm just trying to see if we had budgeted for the assumption, again, that there'd be children in seats. If those children are not going to be in seats, could that money be freed up at all?
Okay, so that money I already freed up. I reduced in-classroom materials by 30% already.
And what was that savings?
My computer's on it. It was about 60,000.
Okay.
I have a question, Sally, if that's okay.
Jamie?
So for the 3 employees that we're kind of talking about within food services, 1 employee is retiring, so that seems kind of a no-brainer to me that we're just not going to replace that position. We're not eliminating the position, we're eliminating the position, but it's not something that we're terminating or relieving her of her duties, correct?
Right.
So we have 2 employees left. Both are going to be going from lean cafeteria workers to just standard cafeteria workers. I don't know what the title is, but what is their decrease? 2 questions. What's their decrease in pay that they'll be getting cut? Is it hourly? Is it a decrease in hours that they're losing, or actually reduction in their pay? And second to that, Mr. Hoshner indicated they might be losing their health insurance over this. Is that correct?
So the 2 team leaders are 8 hours, and they both of them will have bumping rights into at least a cafeteria worker, but all of the lesser positions are 6 hours. So they will have their hourly rate reduced, and then they will have 75% of their benefits paid rather than full-time benefits paid.
And so what's the cost difference between those two employees and the one that we're just completely losing due to retirement?
So that's hard because it's a bumping process. So you don't ultimately know the savings. The savings will be the newest employee that ends up not in their position. So it's not their savings, it's the savings after the bumping process. So the intent is that currently we have almost a $300,000 anticipated deficit, is to reduce that for next year. Regardless, if we return to traditional school, we'd still have that 300,000. So with this, and with the central kitchen, the need for 12 positions is not there because we don't have 4 full cooking kitchens. So it's based on a central kitchen model, as well as having to reduce the deficit in the program.
So why are we just not eliminating positions instead of reducing hours? Would that make it so that these employees, should they not be able to survive on the reduced hours, be able to go find different employment?
So in order to keep them full-time, we have to add new positions. We don't have positions that are 8 hours.
Okay. So what is it, if we kept their positions as is, still had their exact same positions, but we just had the one that was in retirement, what is our cost savings for just that one retired employee?
So that would be so what I don't have for you right now is the exact, if the one position we save is all we're going to do and not move forward, we're going to probably increase the encroachment next year to over 300 because our revenue is also down.
I understand that. I'm just specifically asking for this, if we're going to do, obviously we're going to have to do cuts this year.
So if you're asking for a person-by-person cost difference, yeah. So I'm not going to bring to the board a person-by-person cost differential. If you're asking for that, I can compile it, but it's a bumping process that happens. And so it's not that employee through the bumping process that ends up ultimately not employed. And there are no 8-hour positions other than team leaders. So if we're going to create 8-hour positions, then the board would have to approve that increase to those 8-hour positions. And then what do we do with the current 6-hour positions? Are we going to be adding? So there's a whole conversation around what that looks like in the program.
I'm struggling a little about the new model and the number of staff that are going to be needed, because I mean, we have what, about 20, how many, well, wait, let me see. So we have what, 2,300 students in the district? And
2,000.
Okay, so if we assume half eat in the cafeteria, so producing 1,000 breakfasts and 1,000 lunches, that's where I'm trying to find out, like, what, because I don't know how many staff would that take, and then how many staff would need to transport it and then be able to distribute it. So I'm thinking Aliso needs 2 to distribute. Canalito needs at least 2. Summerlin needs 1. I don't know how many the middle school and high school need to do, but I'm just trying to see, because if I'm counting right, I'm counting 12, but that.
So they don't, so what, okay. So we don't serve 2,000 meals a day. We never have. Right. So on an average, we serve a little over about 1,200 meals, both combined, free, reduced, and paid. In the 2021 budget, I've built in that we're averaging, and this again depends on how we progress into the classroom, but we're averaging about 800 meals a day under grab and go. Mm-hmm. And working out of the central kitchen doesn't necessarily, so the staff that's in the central kitchen doing prep are going to be deployed out to the school to serve, and we don't necessarily need 2 people to serve for grab and go. We're also looking at next year not having home to school transportation. So the bus drivers are, going to be utilized for transport and for service like they are currently. So looking at next year, the team leaders specifically I'll talk to in a central kitchen, I don't need 4 team leaders and a supervisor who will be actively working. They're not in an office, they are at the site, at the high school, to be working in a leadership role because we have one location. So that's the team leader issue.
I agree with the restructure of team leaders. I'm sorry I keep pushing you on how many staff though, because I'm not getting that answer.
So Michelle and I have been talking, and the recommendation is that she believes that we can operate with 7 staff.
For the whole school district?
Yes.
7 6-hour staff? Or?
Yes. With the one team leader at 8 and the other 6 at 6 hours.
And Michelle will be the team leader?
And Michelle's the coordinator, but she'll be an active working staff.
So we'd have 2 8 hours and a 6 and how many
and
hours?
6 hours.
What do we currently have? Obviously.
We have 12, we have 4 8 hours, we have 8 6-hour and a coordinator. We have 13 people right now. And we're suggesting going down to a total of 8.
Yeah, I'd like to throw in a couple of comments. Can you hear me?
Yes.
But a couple of months ago or so, I asked you that it's been a long time since someone has given us a nutrition presentation. Probably at the very least 2 years since that happened, and it hasn't happened. And here's the reason. I have talked to students. I think that you have to but you have to make a better choice for a school lunch that's nutritional to the student. Because students have talked to me, and this is what they've been saying. I told you like 2 months ago or so, and Diana was not here, that number one, they don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do, they take lunch from home. Remember I gave you that example of, because back in 2010, students had Domino's Pizza. Then it was switched to Little Caesars. Well, even to us, given that very same choice, what do you have? A slice of Little Caesars, a slice of Rusty's, or a slice of Domino's? Which one would you prefer? And the answer, Little Caesars is cheaper. I don't think that's the way to go with nutrition. Students have to get the best nutrition available, all of them. And that's something that I told you a couple of months ago or so, and that's something that I'm telling you right now. Please, we need that nutrition presentation. We need to make better lunch choices, and on top of this, I don't know if any of you read it, but I did. Day after day, that's an Aurora School Board of Education on Facebook. On such day, we have a recommendation to cut food services. They had it so on Facebook so that the community, the public, should find out. And it happened. They didn't accept the superintendent recommendation and the superintendent agrees, say, okay, then we'll work together on this. Let's find a more creative way to fund these positions. Let's work together on this. So that's something that that I share you because I follow that daily on Facebook. So that's how the community knew about that. And it well in the advance of that recommendation. And this people, this food service personnel, they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable people, and that's the people that we should protect. The ones who are vulnerable, the ones who, especially in these days, where if you go home, how are you going to make it if you take $200, $300 less per month? No, there's no way. And with all of this uncertainty of what's going to happen, nobody knows. So we need to think about that. And that's the way I think.
So I would like to make some comments. Just in clarification, the number of people that currently serve in the cafeteria, there are 4 team leaders positions, 4 senior worker positions, and 4 cashier assistants, and it is in that order. So what we are proposing is that one of those team leaders, one of those 4, remains. One of them has retired. So the 2 people who would be moved from the team leader position would have displacement rights or bumping rights into other positions. And what I want to make sure that everybody understands about this is that there are currently, putting the team leader piece aside, there are currently 2 openings. So essentially, no one is going to be losing a job. There's 2 openings. One is a senior, one is a cashier assistant. So those 2 people have bumping rights, and they may distribute and displace a bit. However, as a team, everyone is going to be able to continue to be employed. The number of hours that we are going from with the team leaders, they have been the only position that has been funded as an 8-hour position. We will be going from an 8 to a 6. Now, the union proposed, one of their ideas was they proposed keeping those folks at an 8-hour position, but lowering them into a different class. Unfortunately, that does not provide the type of savings that we're looking at, nor does it coordinate with or align with the current positions that are offered, because we have to be very careful about not pulling positions out of the air and assigning the number of positions. The structure, long before we arrived here, was 4 at 8 hours, 4 at 6 hours in the middle position, senior, and then 4 as cashier assistant positions. And so I just wanted to make sure to clarify that. I know that Mr. Hotchner mentioned that idea as being that we keep those people with at 8 hours with their benefits. However, for the reasons that I just mentioned, it doesn't work with this new structure that we're talking about. The position, excuse me, the department of the cafeteria division has been overstaffed for some time. And so what we're trying to do is keep people in place, keep them in their jobs, try to work with the resources that we have and still save money, because we are looking at some significant budgetary issues and deficits right now. And across the state, we're not unique as a district. Across the state, people are losing positions, and you know what that looks like, the number of positions that are being lost. We all wish that we weren't in this space and time, and we are. So we're trying to be in alignment with what needs to happen here. That's it. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows.
The other thing I want to add, thanks Deanna, but the other thing I want to add is Michelle Hernandez, the new coordinator, is a trained executive chef and has years of experience both in 5-star restaurants as well as serving large populations of people. In the restaurant industry, it's the economies of your cost of food and labor to your meal price. So she's been working very diligently in this model of the central kitchen. She's very familiar with it. She's very familiar with the cost and the economies of pricing a per meal operational cost with what you're getting as far as revenue. So having said that, I'm relying on her input as well as consultants, and the Santa Barbara Unified retired director is also working with us on what the central kitchen model looks like. So we are still finalizing what that will look like, but the intent is that we don't need as many staff. We know that. We know we're not going to need 4 team leaders. It's whether or not we can work with less cafeteria senior workers or assistants, and how many of that is that going to be. We do have 2 vacancies currently, and there's multiple layers of issues here. This is not a concept that's new. It's been discussed even with the staff, the cafeteria staff, for quite some time. But there's also been a directive to eliminate or reduce to the greatest extent possible the contribution of the program to the general fund. So that's the goal. Right now in the 2021 budget, and we have the 3 positions eliminated, as well as the 2 vacant positions eliminated, to get to the fact that we're assuming 800 meals a day at full reimbursement at the Seamless Summer program. That's, again, if it's under the National School Lunch Program, the revenue will be even less. And under that model, we're still going to encroach $186,000, under $187,000. So, we can explore different models, but none of them take us the direction that we need to go. It just increases the general fund contribution.
Deanna, thank you for clarifying that there's actually no jobs lost, but there is a financial hit. It's my understanding, I've been pretty up to date on the CARES Act, the original CARES Act, that if an employee's hours are cut, they can apply for unemployment to make up that difference. That's correct? Not that that's a consolation prize, but it is an option.
Yes.
Okay. And they will remain on the 39-month rehire. Is that correct as well?
Yes.
Okay. So just my final statement, because I know we've been on this agenda item. I'm pretty up to date on the budget concerns of the state as part of my job with the county. So it's real. I mean, it's real in every single sector. It's not just education, it's nonprofits, it's county and state services, it's large and small businesses. Millions of Americans have lost their jobs and are facing all of this. And it's a scary time. Budget season's always a scary time for me. I hate this time of the year. It depresses me. It's heartbreaking to talk about cuts, but COVID-19 has just really just increased that uncertainty and that heartbreak. I'm concerned that I don't know the full plan of how it's going to look, and I suspect that when that does happen, that some of these we're going to need to bring some of them back. But I also know that we're also going to look at other cuts in the district because it's going to hurt everybody. So the 10.23% in reduction is real, and this is going to be like no other budget season in our lifetimes. So that's my final comment.
Thank you, Michelle. Anybody else?
I'd just like to say a couple things. Or go ahead, Jamie.
No, go ahead. I talked earlier.
All right. Well, I'd just like to, I really wish Mr. Hotchner had started out with his constructive ideas rather than spend 95% of his time on personally attacking our administration. I don't think that is effective or justified. I always like to hear good, positive, constructive ideas. The personal attacks really have no place in a board meeting, especially when it comes to budgeting. That being said, I'm glad that Deanna clarified the fact that we're not losing actual, people aren't getting cut. We're just losing those positions, which means there's be some bumping reduction in salary, which will be time. But based on everything I've been seeing and reading and listening to budget-wise, this is probably only the beginning of some cuts. I think we're going to hopefully be more fortunate than a lot of the LCFF districts in that our revenues may not, if we're only getting cut the state guarantee, the 10% of the state guarantee. But again, like Michelle said, this is the hardest time of year to cut budgets. Cutting positions is never fun, but it's also a reason to seriously to take very seriously our policy to maintain our 10% reserve. If we have healthy reserves, it means that any cuts we're looking at are not as severe. And we've in the last 3 years, we've seen our reserves dwindle, and it doesn't leave us much cushion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie and Michelle and Andy. Those were great comments. And Rogelio. May I call for the vote? All those in favor? This is resolution.
Roll call.
Jamie.
Sorry, Andy?
Roll call.
Aye.
Sally?
Aye.
Rogelio?
Nay.
Michelle?
Aye.
And I'm aye.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the personnel summary. May I have a motion to approve the personnel summary?
Move to approve.
Sorry?
Can't listen to you.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Sally, we lost you.
I think she's frozen.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry.
Sally, we cannot hear you.
Yep.
Wait.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any other announcements by any other board member? Thank you all for participating. This is just not an easy time by any way, shape, or form, and I think we've got some rough patches to go, but appreciate all of your input from all of you. So thank you, and have a good evening.
Just real quick.
Yes?
Sorry, real quick. As far as the future agenda item, I would like to see a presentation by the new food service coordinator very soon, so she can outline to us exactly how she plans to do this new program, because we do have a lot of questions as far as how it's going to work.
And I would like to congratulate every high school graduate and good luck on your future.
All right, the meeting is adjourned.
Sally, before we adjourn-
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yes, sorry, Diana.
Yes, there's a board calendar item. So we need to discuss the dates for the summer. Currently, there's July 14th, July 28th, August 11th, and August 25th. I'm recommending that we move the July 11th to July 28th because we're not going to have enough financial information until after July 15th. So my recommendation is that the board vote on the 3 summer dates being July 28th, August 11th, and August 25th.
May I have a motion?
Move to approve.
A second?
I second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And additionally, I'd like to remind everyone that beginning in June, our next meeting will be held in person in the chambers at the City Council, City Hall.
Great.
Okay.
The last Zoom meeting.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
all right.
Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Sally.
Bye.